This session is devoted entirely to a discussion of the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70 and the effect that had on Christianity. The destruction of the temple in Jerusalem by Emperor Titus as a result of a Jewish revolt resulting in redefining the structure of Judaism and with Antioch becoming the center of Christianity. So let's talk about that. It's a major event, the destruction of Jerusalem, AD 70. When the Roman general sacked the temple, the Jews were forced into a new era, and so were the Christians. Let me share a bit of the story of the fall of Jerusalem. Gessius Florus loved money and hated Jews. As Roman procurator, he ruled Judea, caring little for their religious sensibilities. He was quite cruel. When tax revenues were low, now I don't want to spend too much time on this, but please understand that in Jerusalem, in Judea, the Jews were at this time in the first century under subjugation to Rome. The Roman Empire had taken over, and Rome basically said, okay, we'll let you continue to live here, we'll let you continue to have your culture, to worship, to do what you want. Just make sure of two things. Make sure that you pay your taxes to Rome. Incidentally, that's why in the New Testament those tax collectors were such hated individuals, and yet they were individuals that Jesus reached out to with the message of the kingdom nevertheless. But Rome said to the Jews, we're going to rule over you from Rome, and we're going to put a Roman procurator or governor regionally there. We're going to put some troops there just to make sure you don't forget that we're in charge. So be sure to pay your taxes, and by the way, no insurrection, no revolt, no protest. Just keep the peace, keep calm. Now, when Jesus is brought by the Jewish leaders to Pilate, remember that power struggle back and forth. And the Jews complained, we're going to report you to Caesar. You're not Caesar's friend. You are no friend of Caesar. That's actually a threat. The Jews are saying, if you don't do what we want, execute this man Jesus, we are going to get you in trouble with your boss. And then, of course, Pilate pokes back, I find you take him and judge him according to your law. And he knows, of course, that they don't have the right to execute. Rome also reserved the right of capital punishment. Okay, so Rome said, pay your taxes and behave. No revolt, no unrest. Well, what happened 66 AD, when tax revenues were low, the regional governor went in and seized silver from the temple. Well, of course, in response to that, there was an uproar against him. He sent, as a result of this Jewish uproar, the governor, they sent troops into Jerusalem, massacred 3,600 citizens. Florus's action touched off an explosive rebellion. It's called the First Jewish Revolt. It had been sizzling for some time. The Jewish revolt began and met its bitter end at Masada. Masada is just a hunk of rock, a fortress stronghold overlooking the Dead Sea. The Romans actually had built it. It was a virtually impregnable fortress there. Yet the atrocities of Florus inspired some Jewish religious zealots to attack Masada. Amazingly, they won a temporary victory, slaughtering the Roman army that was garrisoned there. In Jerusalem, things escalated, and soon all Jerusalem was in an uproar. And the revolt spread throughout all Judea and then Galilee. Cestius Gallus, the Roman governor of the region, marched from Syria with 20,000 soldiers. He besieged Jerusalem for 6 months, and yet he failed. He left 6,000 dead Roman soldiers. Not to mention, They left weaponry that the Jewish defenders then picked up and used. Well, Emperor Nero then sent Vespasian, a decorated general, and Vespasian's orders from Nero were to quell the Judean rebellion. Vespasian put down the opposition in Galilee, and then in the Transjordan, and then in Idumea. He circled in on Jerusalem. But before he could finish the job of ending the Jewish revolt, Nero died. Vespasian became embroiled in a leadership struggle that concluded with the Eastern armies calling for him to be emperor. And so Vespasian became the Roman emperor. And one of his first imperial acts was to appoint his son Titus to conduct the Jewish war. Now, by now, Jerusalem was isolated from the rest of the nation, and factions within the city fought over strategies of defense. As the siege wore on, people began dying from starvation and plague. The high priest's wife, who once basked in luxury, was scavenging for crumbs in the streets. Meanwhile, the Romans employed new war machines to hurl boulders against the city walls of Jerusalem. Battering rams assaulted the fortifications. Jewish defenders fought all day and struggled to rebuild the walls at night. Now, eventually the Romans broke through the outer wall, then the second wall, and finally the third wall. Still, the Jews fought, retreating only to the temple as their last line of defense. And that was the end of the valiant Jewish defenders and for the temple. Historian Josephus claims that Titus wanted to preserve the temple, but his soldiers were so angry at their resilient opponents that they burned it. And thus the fulfillment of Jesus' prophecy. You may remember it. Truly I say to you, Jesus said, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. Matthew 24 and verse 2. The remaining Jews were slaughtered or sold as slaves. The zealot band that took Masada held it for at least 3 more years. And then when the Romans finally built their siege ramp, the Roman army showed up, and again, Masada was thought to be impregnable, unable to be taken by force or by army. It had a cistern. They could hold out for a long time. Well, Rome said, oh, well, okay, we can still take care of that. And they amassed actually a massive ramp made of dirt. They brought in Roman engineers. There are remnants of it there today. If you tour that area, you will see Masada, and you will see the land ramp or bridge that the Roman engineers just built up the mountain. And then when it was completed, they just marched their armies up the ramp. And so they built this siege ramp and they invaded the mountain fortress. But when they did, they found the defenders dead. They had committed suicide to avoid being captured by foreigners. The Jewish revolt marked the end of the Jewish state until modern times. It was until 1940s. The destruction of the temple also signified a change in the Jews' worship. The first destruction of the temple by the Babylonians in 586 BC had forced the Jews to become people of the book. Well, the obliteration of the temple ended the Jews' sacrificial system in AD 70. Their records were lost. They adjusted, of course, creating new rituals for home and synagogue. But the Sanhedrin was dissolved and has not been reconstituted. The center of Jewish religion actually moved to the educational institutions. Now let me ask you this. Where were the Christians? Where were the Christians during the fall of Jerusalem when Rome viciously came and killed so many? How many Christians died? Well, many Christians had already been driven out of Jerusalem by persecution decades earlier. But tradition says no Christians died in the destruction of Jerusalem because they had already fled, heeding the prophecy of Christ, which we have recorded in Matthew 24, that when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in his house, and let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. So evidently they took the warning of Jesus very seriously. They believed in the truthfulness of his prophecy. The New Testament ends with a seemingly paradoxical tone. Growth, yet persecution. Let me conclude with a word of encouragement drawn from Revelation 17, verse 14. I think that this is the key verse for the book of Revelation. Remember, Revelation is about enduring as the church in spite of oppression from seemingly powerful forces. Those forces will eventually fade, and the kingdom of Christ will remain and have a glorious future. Notice what it says. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those with him are called and chosen and faithful.